What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we're doing a spoiler-free review of Moon Knight Episode 1. Tomorrow, we will have the video with like all the Easter eggs and the spoilers and all that kind of cool stuff. So here's the thing. Moon Knight feels a little bit different than I thought it would, but I absolutely love it. It is just great. There was no point over the first episode when I was bored. I think that's probably one of the more important things. There was no point where I was really bored when it came to the show. I thought it was just interesting and riveting from start to finish. I will say that like the inner monologue that they had over the course of that show, it gave me some really strong like Eddie Brock and Venom vibes from like the Sony Venom film, but I loved it. I also love the way that like the switching personalities was depicted. Now, I don't know anybody who has dissociative identity disorder. I don't know anyone with that, so I have no idea how that process takes place. I'm curious to see, I might look up a YouTube video to see what it's like with a person who has dissociative identity disorder, but I feel like it would be fascinating to educate myself on that and to learn more about it. Having said that, over the course of the show, there were some great moments, there were some great references. There's one where I don't know if they directly referenced what I'm thinking of in terms of a location, but if it's where I think it is, yeah. That's a video for tomorrow. That's a video for tomorrow. Great little Easter eggs, great little references. I love the character development. I love the dynamic. This is by no means a spoiler, but Arthur Harrow, who would put like glass in his shoes and then walk on them, that's wildly intriguing, right? That's wildly interesting to me. I'm curious to see if that's gonna have any significance later on down the line, because that's kind of a big thing to do and then not offer any explanation for it. That's kind of wild. So I loved the way that Oscar Isaac portrayed Steve Grant. I love the Steve Grant character. It's so I mean, I wanna say fun, but at the same time, his life kind of sucks. So I don't know if I would say the way he portrays him is fun, but you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting. It's really interesting and really intriguing. So I love that whole thing. I love the slight invocation of like the mythos, with enough of us, really leaving enough out for us to be intrigued and to want to see more. Overall, it was a phenomenal first episode. It was straight and it was to the point. It gives you some mystery and it gives you some intrigue, but it also makes you wonder what else is going on behind the scenes. How else are things unfolding? I will say what I was expecting to a degree, because I've been reading Moon Knight for a long time. And so what I was expecting was maybe some combination of the old like Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu stories, or maybe like Jeff Lemire's run or something along those lines, or possibly even really more recently like Jed MacKay. I was expecting that. We didn't really get that. We didn't really get that exact depiction of Moon Knight. Instead, it's a combination of some things that we've seen in the comics. There were a couple stories that the creator came out and said were like just highly influential. I think it was the director came out and said was highly influential for the Moon Knight show. But all in all, it's a combination of elements from the Moon Knight mythos. And I think that that's kind of to be expected, right? That's to be expected. I mean, you look at WandaVision, that's a combination of elements, right? It's a combination of WandaVision Volume 2, or really Vision and Scarlet Witch Volume 2 by Steve Englehart, not the old Bill Mantlo 4-issue one, but the Steve Englehart 12-issue run, right? And it is the Scarlet Witch solo series by something Robinson. I can never remember their whole name. But that series, like the one with like, it's like the white background with like the red design of Scarlet Witch and the art's really funky, that kind of thing. It's basically that, and a couple other stories, right? It's like some Avengers stories tossed in, different things like that, you know, with a pinch of House of M. but you know, it's one of those things where in the MCU at this point, we don't really get like a particular character story arc manifested in film form. That's not really how that works. I mean, even with Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, that was a combination of Avengers Forever, as well as the Infinity Gauntlet, and then like a smattering of Infinity War minus the Cosmic Cube, and then like the original Cosmic Cube saga with Captain Marvel. It had all those little elements, all right, little elements from all those different things all thrown into that movie. So you know, it's kind of intriguing, because I know there are still people out there who approach, or who are going to approach, the Moon Knight show from the perspective of like, I want to see a run from Moon Knight, right? A character arc, like a 6-issue story arc manifested in this show. Honestly, I think that would drag it down, to be quite frank. You know, this episode was just great. And I gotta say, man, if this is the future, because as we know, when it comes to Marvel Cinematic Universe shows, the first show is the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, there's no telling what's going to happen over the course of this show. Literally, the Loki show picked up with Loki being snatched up by the TVA because of the fact that he had essentially grabbed the Tesseract and disappeared in the first Avengers movie. By the time the show ends, they killed some version of Kang the Conqueror and the multiverse came back. So there's no, or I guess the multiverse expanded, right? It had already been back, but like it expanded. So there's no telling where in the hell this show is gonna go. That being said, and this isn't really a spoiler for the show. That being said, I am really hoping, just based on the comic mythos, this will in some form or fashion segue or give us a post-credit scene or some kind of teaser that will indicate the arrival of the Midnight Suns. I'm really hoping that happens. And here's the reason why. The Midnight Suns is something that we haven't really seen before. We know we already have Blade. He was the voice we heard in the post-credit scene of Eternals. Spoiler for a movie that nobody really liked too much. And then Moon Knight, of course, was a long-standing member of the Midnight Suns. I haven't seen Morbius yet, so I don't know how that movie fits into the greater, Marvel Cinematic Universe. If it does, I don't know, Adrian Toomes is there. I'm hearing mixed things. I'm hearing things from different directions, right? And none of them make any sense. So I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on there. Doctor Strange led the Midnight Suns at one point in time. We know that Robbie Reyes was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. continuity is like murky at best. So I'm not really sure if it even fits into the Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. And if it doesn't, I don't know how that's the case, because literally the leader of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a guy who was in the Avengers and died, so he's kind of like, that just confirms continuity, I guess. I don't know. Regardless, we've seen different characters appear in some form or fashion, whether it's a voice or just a full on-screen appearance. We've seen characters appear in the MCU up to this point that have had ties with the Midnight Suns. And so I would love it if this kind of segues into it, even if it doesn't. Right, even if it doesn't, a huge influence in this episode was Mark's dissociative identity disorder. Again, I loved the way they handled it. I love the way that they depicted it. I don't know how accurate it is, but I love the cinematic view and the cinematic visual of how his dissociative identity disorder manifested, right? I absolutely loved that whole thing. And so I'm really hoping they focus more into that. What I'm hoping they don't do over the course of this show, I'm hoping they don't do what Bendis did, right? So for those of you guys who don't know, Brian Michael Bendis is a comic book writer. He overcomplicates things. The whole idea is that back in the early Moon Knight stories, it was believed that Mark Spector had schizophrenia because you didn't know if like Khonshu was real, if like Khonshu's appearance to him were real or anything along those lines. It was just one of those things where like maybe he just can't differentiate between reality and fantasy. Over the years, it's been confirmed Khonshu is real. He was actually given powers by Khonshu, and that it's not really a schizophrenic thing. But I'm hoping the show does not invoke that. And if it does, it's just slightly touching on it. But the mental illness that Mark Spector struggles with right now is dissociative identity disorder. So I would rather they very much focus on that. Right? I'd rather they very much focus on that element, because that alone makes his character phenomenal. Like in Jeff Lemire's run, like with his personalities, Mark Spector, Jake Lockley, and Steve Grant, basically in that run, he had to like confront all of his personalities and merge them, as opposed to like ignoring them, because that's what caused his dissociative identity disorder, right? His D.I.D. is that he was ignoring those personalities and they kept trying to show up, right? They kept trying to make themselves known. They literally had a mind of their own. And so by merging them all together, then he was a whole personality again. Until he wasn't. But the thing is like, that's what happened in Jeff Lemire's run. So, I think it'd be cool. I'm curious to see how all this stuff plays out. But in terms of the first episode, it was phenomenal. It was absolutely mind-blowing. So with that being said, guys, tomorrow's video is gonna be the spoiler one. That's where we go through all the Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff, because for keen-eyed fans, there's more than a few things to be referenced in this episode, especially location-wise. There's definitely, yeah. It's what I think it is. I hope it's what I think it is. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.